Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm really glad you're here today for day 2. And before we get started, I just wanted to ask if anything came up for you yesterday. Did you sit with the questions about when you felt most like yourself and when you felt like you were bracing for impact? Because sometimes that question can come in really quietly and that's fine. And sometimes it can open up things that you weren't quite expecting. But either way, whatever happened, whatever came up is exactly right for you. So there's no wrong answers. And yesterday we also talked about resistance being protection. We talked about your nervous system learning a set of rules a very long time ago, about what safety actually looked like for you. And we talked about how your body's been holding all of that in, showing up as your symptoms in your gut, in your pain levels, in the tensions you carry without even noticing. And today what we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit deeper, because underneath those patterns of resistance and self-sabotage and that pulling back and the why can I not just do this, there's a real story, and I want to help you to find yours. Now, a hidden story isn't something really dramatic, because when people hear the word story or belief, they sometimes think it has to be this big, obvious trauma, something that they're immediately going to recognise. And because of that, they are scared to turn around and to face it. It's a bit like Plato's cave. If you know that story well, you'll know that very briefly, that there's a man in a cave and all you can see is this great big shadow on the wall and he thinks it's a massive monster. But if he only turned around, he'd see it was a beautiful city behind him, and he's been sitting there afraid to turn around and face it all the time he was there. And so it's a little bit like that. We hear those words and we think it's something really, really dramatic. And sometimes it is, but more often it's something far quieter than that. It's often the conclusions that the younger version of you drew from very ordinary everyday experiences. For instance, the moment you tried something and failed and then somebody laughed at you. Yeah. The time you needed something and nobody was there for you. The way love may have always felt conditional in your house growing up. Or the message you took on board about what kind of person you were allowed to be. Whether that was you were only allowed to be a softer person, a quieter person, more intelligent person, less boisterous person. And you didn't file that away as a belief. You actually filed it away as an absolute truth. And what's so important to understand about that is that the younger version of you was doing something really incredibly intelligent. She was actually pattern matching what she was seeing around. She was looking at her world. She was drawing the most logical conclusion that she could from the evidence that she had available at the time. The problem with that is that she was working with only partial information, very limited evidence, and she never got the chance to update her findings because she's been trapped in this cycle ever since. Because nobody actually talks to us about what we're thinking and feeling most of the time when we're children. We're left to get on with a lot of things. And I know I didn't talk enough to my children about feelings. It would only come up if they were upset about something at school, or my eldest daughter would talk about being picked on at school because of her background. She came from, she had a Turkish father, and so she would say things like, I would just say to her, look, you've got a skin colour that people are going to kill for when you grow up. Everybody's going to want a tan like yours. But when it came to anything deeper, I was like any other parent at the time. I was just taking care of my children, trying to work my way around my own illness and basically doing the best job that I can. And I'm sure lots of other parents out there were doing exactly the same kind of thing. So the story that we write from back then has been running quietly in the background ever since, and it's been shaping your choices, and it's been filtering what you think is possible and deciding on what you deserve. So how do you find it Well, you follow the feeling. You follow the feeling, not the thought, because thoughts can be rationalized. Thoughts can be talked over and talked around, but your feelings are a direct messenger from your nervous system, and they'll take you straight to the story if you allow them to. So here's how I want you to try and do this. I want you to think about the thing you keep avoiding. Whether it's a goal you keep setting and not reaching, whether it's a relationship pattern that keeps repeating, whether it's the way you shrink in certain situations, or just whatever comes up into your head, the first thing that comes into your mind. And I don't want you to think about the behaviour itself. What I want you to do is to go underneath the behaviour and ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if this actually worked out? Sit with that for a minute, because the answer that comes up for you, especially the one that feels slightly uncomfortable or even a little bit silly when you say it out loud, that usually points directly to the story that's going on for you. And maybe the answer is, people would expect more of me and I'd fail. You know, that can be a pretty common one. Maybe it's, I'd have to be visible and something bad would happen. Or it could be, I don't actually believe I'm someone things work out for. Maybe it's, if I get well, I will lose the one thing that makes people slow down and take care of me. Now, that last one is far more common than you'd think. And I want to say straight from the off, there's no shame in that at all, none whatsoever. Because think about it, when care and rest have only ever been available to you through illness, your nervous system learns to use illness as the route to get both of those things. Some might call that manipulation, but it's actually a survival response. So now I want to give you some of the most common hidden stories that I see in the women I work with. Because sometimes hearing them being said out loud is a moment that something might click for you. And I don't know if any of these will be yours, but if they are, you can take note of them, write them down. So the first one is, I'm not enough. That's a story that's common for many people. I'm too much. I'm not safe to be seen. If I need things, people will leave. I have to earn my place. Love is conditional on my performance. Other people's needs always come before mine. If I stop struggling, people will think I was fine all along. Did any of those drop in somewhere in your chest? Just sit with that for a minute. And did one of them make you want to look away, even slightly? Because if any of those did, it's worth paying real attention to them. Because what I find so fascinating about my own journey through this and the women I work with is that the hidden story almost never feels like a belief, it feels like a fact. And that's how you know you've found it, when it feels like a fact. Because even the thought comes up and your immediate response isn't, I wonder if that's true. And instead you automatically say, well, obviously that's true, that's just how things are. That's the story talking. And it's been talking so long, it sounds so much like your own voice. Your prompt for today are 2 questions, but they belong together. So I've dropped them in the comments again, and I will be doing this each day underneath each video. So go there and find them. Tomorrow we're doing something that I genuinely find one of the most powerful parts of this whole thing that we're doing over the next 6 days. And we're going to question whether your story is actually true. Because what I've seen again and again in my own life and in the women I've worked with, the story feels completely real, completely solid, and completely factual. And when you actually examine the evidence, it never seems to hold water. So I will see you tomorrow. tomorrow. Go to the comments, get your questions for today. I look forward to hearing what you've got to say about them and what came up for you. I'll see you on day 3.